Hey, Jacob here. Thanks for listening to Something Rotten. But you know what's more enriching than listening to a podcast? Reading a book. Specifically, my new book, How a Game Lives. We are doing pre-orders for that book right now. You can order them from Lost in Cult, which is linked in the description. This is a book that is an annotated anthology of some of the best essays that I've written over the past 5 years, and includes lots of additional writing by other people, including Something Rotten guests like Renata Price, and Blake Hester, unfortunately, is also featured in the book. Go ahead, check it out. There's a lot of goodies that you can only get in this pre-order period, and I promise it is going to be very, very cool. Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to Something Rotten. We will start the episode in a minute, but I wanted to throw a healthy content warning in front of this episode because we talk a significant amount about sexual assault and also about suicide. So if either of those things are triggering for you, or you just don't want to listen to a podcast that deals with those, that's fine. Skip this one, and also maybe think carefully before you play the video game Disco Elysium. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Something Rotten. We are talking about the video game Disco Elysium. Can you even believe it? This is going to be covering day 2 and 3 of Disco Elysium, in which there are about 1 million things that you can do, but we are going to be taking Blake's lead on what he did in day 2 and 3. Blake, how were the next 2 days of this game?
Well, before we jump into that, we've been doing this pod regularly now for over a year. Yep. And time was, earlier eras of the show. You just play a little game, come on here, say some smart sounding stuff, and people are like, oh my god, what a podcast. Now we're playing a game that requires me to actually be smart, and I've never felt more out of my depth in my life than going through this game being like, man, what does half of these words mean? Are even half of the words in this script real words? It's a lot. But here's the thing, Jacob. It's been a wild couple days in Revachol. I am truly just a cop doing his best out here.
I am so excited. There's so many potential things to talk about here, and I'm really curious which ones you have and not.
That was a real question. Are half the words in the script just fake words?
I think like 25% of them are fake, and another 25% are like technically real but haven't been used in like 80 years. Would be my guess. But to talk about this game with us, Blake and I are joined by a YouTube essayist, content creator, person who I've enjoyed many of their videos, and also, and I want to know if you've noticed this as well, Penny. We have a weird parallel production schedule quite often. Penny from the channel Leadhead is here. Welcome to Something Rotten.
Hey everybody, and I have absolutely noticed that a whole lot of people in my community have compared me to you and stuff, and low-key, there's always been a little bit of jealousy, because I don't have, like, the guts to go and name a video like Time Loop Nihilism or something. I want to give them, like, very direct, objective titles that let people know exactly what they're getting into, but I just don't have the guts to go for more bold things like you do.
Look, I think your titles are great and very bold, including 1 month ago, I dedicated an eighth of my life to a shit post. Like, that's a great title.
Wow. Jacob, what would the Jacob Geller Disco Elysium video be called?
Blake, this is embarrassing for you. I've made a video on Disco Elysium.
You've made so many videos. Who can keep track? Come on. What am I, an encyclopedia?
My one, it was called Searching for Disco Elysium, but before that, I did actually have a script that I never finished called The Fuck Up Cop that I was considering.
Oh, so I was not far off. I suggested Fuck Idiot Cop.
Pretty close. But before we start talking about Disco, I want to ask you, Penny, just your most recent video at the time of this recording is a video on Metal Gear Solid 2, which Blake and I just finished for the first time for this podcast, like less than a month ago. It's a really cool video. Do you want to kind of give a short version of the thesis for listeners?
Okay, so I've done a lot of Metal Gear Solid stuff. Back in the day, I would say that, like, what I first found any notoriety with was a bunch of Metal Gear videos. And recently I put together a giant, 3-hour long project just covering all of the mainline games. And then I'm like, wait, but there is something else I kind of want to talk about with Metal Gear Solid 2. So I made a video. Essentially what the game's antagonist, the Patriots, this AI, is trying to do is stop humanity, or at least help humanity deal with all of the crap, like fake truths that we put online by filtering them and sorting them and deciding what is the real truth for the future, just getting rid of subjectivity. And I just made a little video, basically a way to vent about some annoyances I've had with the internet lately, about how finally we can say MGS2 was wrong about something, because it's the AIs themselves that are filling the internet with crap information now. And just a way for me to poke fun at some goofy articles, really, saying like, oh, Joe Biden's dead and stuff like that.
Penny, I'll say, when we announced our Metal Gear Solid season, we got many emails from people telling us to watch your videos, which were like, look, we have it covered. We're watching them. Don't worry. However, we also got specific emails about that individual video when it went up. So it's been a long time coming, is what I'm saying, to have you on.
Okay, we're a season late, but we got her on, everyone. So in addition to Metal Gear Solid, you have made several videos about Disco Elysium. And also this is the first episode isn't out yet, but the concept of smoking, which is something that Blake and I talked about quite a bit last week with Kim Kitsuragi. How do you feel like your relationship with Disco has evolved? I mean, did you play it like when it came out?
I played it about 6 months after it came out. I tried it initially, and I'm like, okay, I love everything about this intro, but I'm just not in like the headspace for another Planescape Torment type game. I need some more time before I can get into that. And then eventually, at like 6 months after its release, I finally gave it a proper playthrough. And it was one of those games that I really, really, really connected with. Just this whole idea of you being so trapped inside of your own head, sort of creating this own narrative for everything you've been through that nobody else can see, no matter how hard you want to show it to them. That's like what really grabbed me about Disco Elysium. And I made my initial video on it, which I still think is pretty good, but there were a lot of my old scripts I decided to remake after transitioning because a lot of my perspective has changed. And so fairly recently I remade that video, went all out. I was just moving out of my apartment and I got to destroy it and everything, so I had a really good, like, ruined hotel room set going on. And it's, my perspective on it kind of changed a little bit with my transition and getting on hormones and all that, because I felt like since I was able to more clearly be myself, I had a better job expressing that self to other people. So it was almost like I was at the end of, I don't know if you know his name or not in this playthrough, but...
Yeah, we do.
Okay, I don't know. It was almost like I had reached the end of Harry's character by transitioning and being able to discover myself. So coming at the game again with that perspective of, like, seeing the good on the other side of all that, and having gotten there myself, it was a really fulfilling video.
That's a really interesting perspective, both on, I mean, like, both you having these kind of, like, 2 points in your life that you can directly compare, but also, like, the idea of that being Harry's kind of, like, the place that he's moving towards, because you have all these kind of, these plot elements of, like, okay, he is trying to solve a mystery, and he is trying to remember his name and where he came from, and he's trying to get over his ex, but like ultimately what he's trying to do is like make sense of all of the voices bouncing around his brain and be able to like express something holistic to the outside world. Yeah.
He's trying to figure out who he is and why anybody else should care. Granted, I always play it through the conceptualization art cop sort of angle, so that whole self-expression usually takes a bigger chunk out of my mental real estate in the playthrough than I guess it would for everybody. But
yeah, that's actually that's another good question. So have you experimented with like different capo types or like different builds of this game, or do you kind of have like your version of Harry and you stick with it?
I mean, I've only played through the game 3 times, and my version of Harry has kind of evolved as I have, because obviously I've been through a lot of changes since the game came out. And in a lot of games, I will go and do like the good playthrough, the bad playthrough, join Caesar's Legion, join the NCR, whatever. But it's almost like I have too much respect for this connection that I have with Disco Elysium to play it in a way that doesn't at least kind of align with how I feel about things. Like, I've tried doing the like drunken asshole fascist playthrough, and I just can't do it. I mean, sometimes the game will just send Harry down this path, and you wind up just having to say some really fashy things, but because his mind just kind of works like that. But I've never been able to just like say, okay, I'm gonna do a fascist playthrough and see what happens. Or I'm gonna be a centrist this time.
Yeah, I'm experiencing that for the first time with this playthrough, and it's unpleasant, and particularly, I mean, it's like, this is not a new observation, but like, being mean to Kim sucks. And it also, like, it seems as good of a job of the game does of letting you do different things, it does not really seem like the game is built for you to, like, dislike Kim, because it's like, why would they put effort into that? No players are going to hate Kim, and I'm trying to roleplay as a player who, like, you know, disrespects my partner, and it's hard, and the game does not make it fun.
Yeah, I mean, hating Kim from like a I'm racist angle, I can't imagine anybody doing that genuinely for anything other than just to see what happens. But I can understand seeing Kim as a sort of counterbalance to the type of Harry that you want to be, just because he has that stick up his ass. Like, maybe you do want to go and do insane things and just be a horrible, like, disgrace to the uniform, like on the box art. And Kim's kind of fucking with your energies, killing your high. I can understand sort of antagonizing Kim a little bit, but hating him and, like, being mean to him just because, you know, you don't like his race, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, like, he is the game's version of the best cop, you know, like, and it's like, there is kind of a ceiling on, like, how good are you going to feel about cops, even one as you know, utterly kind of respectable as Kim Kitsuragi. Okay, Blake, there's so much that I want to ask you about your playthrough. Is the body still in the tree?
The body is still in the tree, Jacob.
Oh no.
Look,
okay,
we're all trying our best. Harry Du Bois is out here doing his damnedest. All right, let me, if you don't mind me taking the reins here.
Go for it.
A lot has happened in the last 2 fictional days of Disco Elysium that feel like 2 literal actual days as far as I'm concerned. I also noticed you cannot stand still and let the clock run. It will just not move forward, which I found pretty fascinating. I tried to
something to do.
I tried to trick
you
the game.
can't. There is a bench you can sit on to move time forward.
I have been reading the same book over and over and over. So one of
reading about cockatoos.
One of the Dick Mullen books against my better judgment. But it did fall apart in my first read through, so I can only read 4/5 of it, and I don't get to know the ending of the book, which is very funny. So rather than go through the whole kit and caboodle, I thought I would highlight the most the 10-pole moments for me in my 2 days here. However, I did bring a list of my stats for the pod.
Okay.
So as of right now, my highest cop stat is the sorry cop, which I felt like, as a recovering alcoholic, being sorry, you know, I just knew the territory. So I have, and keep in mind, I don't really know what a lot of these numbers mean, 13 points under the sorry cop stat here. Next would be the boring and superstar cop, tied at 4 points, and then apocalypse cop with 2 points. My political affiliation, unsurprisingly perhaps, communist with 12 points, and then fascist, ultra-liberal, and moralist are all tied at 3 points. Not really sure what these are, the good cop, bad cop, and the honor. I have good cop, bad cop is at 11 points. Honor is at 5 points. Then I have the, 3 people killed, 216 cases solved, which I assume, does it go up throughout the game as you're solving various cases?
That's a good question. I don't know, because I don't know.
Yeah, I never checked the second time.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if the only case you're really solving is the hanged man, or if, like, the little mysteries you're doing, like, count.
Well, you can. I remember there's certain points where you can tell Kim, like, all right, that's it. I'm taking on the case of who threw the toilet paper in the tree.
Yep.
That's right.
And then I of course have 18 years in the service. I spent a lot of time exploring. I will say the game, which maybe we could talk about why I have no plans or aspirations to play another game like this ever again. I do think the game finally clicked for me while playing it. And it was during one of the 10-pole moments, but off the top of my head, and if any more come to mind, I'll shout them out throughout the podcast. But the big moments that happened for me, Jacob, Penny, if you're ready, is interviewing the Hardy Boys and Classier and hearing what they had to say. Going across the canal and finding the rest of the map, beating the holy shit dog piss out of Measurehead, which I was very happy about. Discovering and talking to the Union boss, which was really, I would say, morally conflicting for me and the game I was playing. I think those are the big moments for me. Those 4 were the big things that happened.
How about the car? Is that included in finding map?
And, Jacob, before you interrupted me, finding my poor man Harry's car. Yeah, I was on a spiritual and mental and emotional journey throughout these 2 days.
I think it's been interesting replaying this because I wondered if I would have the same experience as the first time, and I kind of did, which is I think towards the second half of the second day, it kind of feels like you run out of stuff to do.
Yeah, I've been reading that fucking Dick Mullen book over and over.
It just kind of feels like it's like, okay, you maybe haven't done everything. Obviously, your body's still in the tree, but like there is a limited amount of forward progress that you can make, and you've probably talked to all the NPCs. And then on that third day, when everything opens up, I think that's where, Blake, I think you said that's where the game really started clicking with you. That's where, for me, I was no longer like, I have to play this game for something rotten. I was thinking like, I'm just going to keep playing Disco Elysium because I'm so in love with what's happening right now. But it is like that second day gets a little slow.
Yeah, so we could maybe talk about him a little out of sequence here, because I did a lot of the Hardy Boy stuff and the drug investigation and the Classier interrogation all on the second day. But the third day was such a big moment for me, crossing that canal. And I've been thinking about it, and I think like when you start this game and you've never played it before, it is so, for lack of a better word, inscrutable. Just like getting your bearings in that opening area and figuring out like the rhythm of the game, that it can be a trip, right? And I think by the time I opened up the canal, which I did on the third day, I don't know if it's possible to get there earlier than that. I had to wait for the bridge, the dam to close or whatever the case may be. I knew the game I was playing, right? Like I knew how to play Disco Elysium, or at least how I play Disco Elysium. And so all of a sudden being presented with this effectively entirely new world, because it feels completely different than the main downtown area. Like there's a completely different income bracket and type of person that lives there. It is just like geographically very different. I really knew the rhythm and the flow of the game, and I was able to like really get lost in that in a good way. Like get lost in talking to everyone. Like I love the trio of drunks you find. The one who's like, don't call Anna, the one who's trying to sell, the dude who's trying to sell a bottle for $300, and you're like, well, I'll give you 3. And then the guy who tells you just the most nonsense stories you've ever heard. And, you know, going and finding the little girl and finding the old factory and finding the church. And I was just like, oh my God, like I'm losing my mind. Like I'm so in love with like this moment specifically in the game. Though, of course, the big tentpole moment is finding your car, which I would say for me, outside of the shock of, oh man, crazy, is heartbreaking. It is a extremely sad moment of this game to just like discover that car and will yourself to learning what happened to you. There is some humor to it when you learn the Tequila Sunrise story, but like the game kind of forces you to sit on a bench for a while and just like, what's the opposite of luxuriate? Be just utterly miserable for a long time, recognizing who you are. It's the Harry I'm playing. I mean, maybe Jacob's Harry is like, fuck yeah, I did that. I was on some Evil Knievel shit. And it's weird. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but like playing this game as a recovering addict, I feel like for the most part, it does a fine job. It's fairly surface level addict stuff, but like it's good at it. But this moment is really interesting because like when you hear what Harry did in Whirling in Rags, it's like, yeah, man, that fucking sucks. But like there's a limit to the danger in some ways. Like it's like, yeah, you're threatening suicide, but it all just is so outlandish, and the game is tongue-in-cheek about it, that it's like, you're just being an idiot. The car as someone who has totaled a car, it's like, wow, it's serious, huh? Like it's really bad, and the game like makes you like sit in it and think about who this person is. And I was like, it was really hard for me to get through as someone who has done a similar thing. It was difficult to deal with. And I think that was the moment. And then, of course, exploring the rest of that area. I was like, this is the fucking game. I hope to never play another CRPG, but this is that good shit right here.
Penny, car thoughts?
Okay, it's funny you say that as being one of the saddest moments in the game, because I, even on, like, a Sorry Cop playthrough, one where I'm not being the superstar cop or anything, I have always seen that as one of the, not happy, but not one of the sad moments in the game either. Because if I'm not mistaken, that's also when you find your badge, right?
Yeah.
And looking at your badge is when you learn that Harry was a Lieutenant W. Freighter. And that is why Kim is following him and, like, actually kind of listening to him and showing him some respect. Because it's like, when you find out, oh, you actually did used to be, like, an incredible cop. You know, it gives you something to hold on to, and that, like, hey, you can pull rank on Kim. Like, he has a reason to respect you no matter what you do. And I don't know, it plays into the whole brothers in arms thing, and for me, made me feel a whole lot closer to Kim and a whole lot more like, hey, he's seen how good I can be, or at least he understands how good I can be. So
right,
it's like now you and him both have a clear goal to work towards in terms of rehabilitating Harry.
I certainly agree with you, but I think the did used to be speaks to what I see as the inherent sadness of Harry as a character. And that being said, like, I'm playing a playthrough that I think is ultimately hopeful. Like, I am a sober Harry. I'm not even smoking cigarettes. However, it's looking at his ID and, like, reckoning with the, you know, grade A cop you were at one point, and then looking at who you are in day 3 of Disco Elysium. That is, like, it's still a tragic moment that I think has the potential to, like, be hopeful. But, like, I felt the lowest for my character in that moment of just, like, I fucked up. Like, it's bad.
I think it is interesting how much work the game telling you that Harry is a very effective cop does. You know, because it's not just he is Lieutenant W. Freighter, which means that essentially, like, he could have been promoted twice and he turned it down, and that he just, like, kept being, he didn't want to become management. He wanted to be a cop. And if you look at his kind of, you know, the clipboard, the thing you can find with all your case files, it's like he's solved so many cases. You can read about a lot of them. He is really effective. And so seeing him at the bottom of the barrel here, it is like, wow, look at how far you've fallen, but also there is this kind of acknowledgement of, like, you are not entirely worthless as a human being. Like, he is talented, he's smart.
For sure.
He's not, you know, it's like, I think if they hadn't given you that, it would almost, you would wonder, like, what you were trying to return to. And also, the game makes clear that, like, doing all that shit is part of what destroyed him. Like, working towards that promotion is, like, what drove him in, at least partially, into alcoholism and all of that. So it's not like you want to be exactly that cop again, but, like, acknowledging his talents, the way that, like, he has been able to do this job effectively before, I think makes it feel a little less hopeless that you could solve this case, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, I like, to be clear, I don't think it's a hopeless moment, but it is and if I said so, maybe I misspoke, but, like, it's a tragic moment for me. But I, like, the way I am playing the game is, like, I am working towards the good ending, quote unquote, right? Like, I see Harry getting back to some semblance of normalcy.
A couple moments that I really love with that, there is the kind of, like, so basically you have to wait for it to, like, melt out of the ice is kind of why you have to sit on the swings. And there's this thing where there's a skill check where you can try and whistle. And of course I, like, failed that skill check, and Kim kind of, like, laughs at you, and you're like, okay, Kim, you try to whistle. And then it's just this game flexing its writing muscles of being like, Kim whistles the most beautiful whistle you've ever heard, and you, like, start crying because of how beautiful the whistle Kim did was. And it's so good.
I had a skill check with Kim where we were looking at a wall filled with bullet holes, and Kim nodded his head, and I was like, I'm gonna nod my head as well. And then it's like Kim keeps nodding his head. And I'm like, okay, well, that's my boy. Like, I'm going to keep nodding my head too. And then you have a nod off with him until ultimately you nearly break your own neck and you lose a bit of health because you're nodding so ferociously.
That's some good stuff. Okay, I wondered if you had found the second body.
Oh my god, dude. I left no stone uncovered in this fucking game as far as I could see. Yeah, I found the second body. That's sad. Dear listener, if you're not playing along, you find a second body who has drank himself, not to death, but has died in part due to being drunk. And you can, it's a quick investigation if you do it right, or at least do it the way I did. But like, you have to go deliver the news to his wife, who is like someone you can actually find out in the world, and like is like kind of, you have a weird interaction with her where she's trying to just like read a book, and you're like, well, you need a cop's help, right? And she's like, no, you fucking idiot. But she is ultimately who, like, you go to her apartment after like finding his library card and calling and getting info on him and like delivering the news. And her just like, there is like some really horrific writing in a good way about just like her immediate grief process. That was something else. Nothing smart to say about it, just this shit. So, I mean, Harry has some reflection, right? Like, I think I chose for him to tell Kim, like, that could have been me or some shit like that. But yeah, I've sure found that body.
It's I will never forget. I was listening to years ago a Waypoint stream or a podcast about this, and Austin referred to delivering the news as this game's version of a boss fight, where you're like, oh god, I want more than anything to not fuck this up. Like, you know.
And I did.
Yeah.
I failed the check.
What'd you say?
Oh, yeah. I can't quite remember, but you just fumble through it and Kim comes and saves your ass. Like, I didn't say anything awful, but it was just like, I think like he was just breaking down, trying to figure out, and Kim had to actually come in and do it.
I think, and we'll talk about this more when you eventually get the body out of the tree. But like the way that this game writes about death, I think is so beautiful in its kind of, in its frank and often grotesqueness, you know, that it doesn't treat it gently, but it treats it very, very humanly. You know, and like the idea in a video game that's like, there is one person dead at the beginning of this game. And in most video games, one person dead is called the tutorial. You know, and so then like finding a second person who's died, them communicating that like this is so much more tragic than you even thought, and this was someone, they meant something to someone. You mentioned, Blake, the, you know, like having that weird conversation with the working class woman, but it's like it's the meanest form of like comedic irony, where you find her and you're like, your husband's missing. You need someone to go find your husband. I'm a cop. I'll find your husband. And it just seems like Harry is being insane. And then it turns out that like that it is her husband who died, is like, so you do not want Harry to be right about her husband missing. And the fact that he is just like so heartbreaking in a kind of funny way.
I talked to them Hardy Boys. These motherfuckers, dude, I swear to God, these assholes. I've been like thinking a little bit. I haven't come to some grand conclusion, but about the game placing you in the role of a cop, and at least how I'm playing it as like, and kind of what Kim Kutsuragi is, which is like, in a lot of cases, the platonic ideal of a cop who's just like trying to solve a crime, keep society going. And yet there's like all the politics at play, and like you are able to like figure out who you politically align with. Like, are you a scab? Or are you a union worker? Are you a fascist? Are you a communist? Whatever. And like, obviously, being who I am, I want to align myself with the with the union members, which the Hardy Boys are a part of. And you meet them and they're like, what's up? We killed him. And I was like, great, no problem. Like, whoo! I say, weight off my shoulders. All right. Then the credits rolled, and I said, time to pod. But the further you go down, they're like, we killed him, and I'm like, all right. So how do I get these guys off scot-free? Because, you know, I respect my union worker. But it's interesting the way the game, like, almost exploits isn't the word. Like, you're a cop and you want to do good, but you have these internal feelings. And yet people are people, and sometimes people suck. or they say things you don't agree with, or they lie to you. And the Hardy Boys were like such a mentally conflicting group of people for me, because it's like there is so much of me that agrees with who you are and maybe why you did what you did, but then did you lie about what you did? And then, like, your lie, if that is indeed a lie, is, like, an awful fucking thing to lie about and, like, exploit me wanting to somehow have your back, because they say they killed the guy in the tree who was, help me out, you all, a security guard for the Wild Pines, which
essentially a Pinkerton. He's from Wild Pines, who are, but it's like, they're just the Pinkertons. They're, like, sent to put down labor disputes.
Yeah, so, like, when you interview the Hardy guys and they're, like, basically boasting about killing them, they're like, well, yeah, he raped someone. And I was like, oh, well, I'm on your side. Let's kill him again. Let's get him out of the tree, kill him again. But then you go, like, they're like, I went through the process of getting the information about who the victim was. It was Classier. Go to interview her, and she's like, I wasn't raped. That was I was having a fling with this guy, and it's like, it really, like, tests you if you are trying to play, like, the right cop. If you're basing who you are off Kim Kutaragi, as, like, the game will really push your buttons. Does any of this make sense?
I think it totally makes sense. Penny, feelings on, like, the Hardy Boys, which, again, it's like the feelings will evolve over the course of the game, but, like, this first interview with them, I feel like, is a real, not necessarily what you expect when you walk up to talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a lot similar to Everard, the Union leader, who is also like an extremely unlikable character, especially if you're the kind of person who supports unions. I think a big part of the game is Harry is so focused on trying to build up an identity for himself, and the reason so much of the game has this sort of political focus is because in Harry's mind, like, finding a political identity for himself is one of the, like, key signifiers that he's become a person again. And it's interesting to me how so many people are, like, complete assholes instead of aligning with Harry's, or in spite of aligning with Harry's politics. Because it's like, to everyone else, their politics are just the way things are. Obviously, this is the correct viewpoint. For Harry, it's almost like his politics are kind of a self-actualization checkpoint more than an actual view of the world. And I guess this doesn't tie in too much with the Hardy Boys specifically, but it was always just very interesting to me how other people treat politics so matter-of-factly, whereas in Harry's head, we see everything as this big debate where fascist voices are talking about how they're turning women into men. And but to everyone else, it's just the way things are. Like with Measurehead, he says all these insane things so matter-of-factly, like it's just 2 plus 2.
He's like naming Pokemon cards, but he's like going through the skull sizes of different ethnicities.
Yeah. Oh my god. I think the Hardy Boys also highlighted me thinking I was playing a dumber game than I was playing, because I was like, well, I'm doing the good thing. I'm aligning with the good people. Like, the game is clearly it's going to be fucking easy street. The Union people are all going to be great and cool. I love the dude sitting on the banister. I'm like, he's awesome. He's the coolest dude of all time. And then the Hardy...
that's Call Me Manana, right?
But then the Hardy Boys are instantly like, well, no, you're playing a game much smarter than you, because, like, just because you agree with them politically or whatever the case may be, like, doesn't just automatically mean they're good guys in the narrative here. And I think that was the moment that light bulb went off in my head. And then I met the Union boss, and I was like, I think I'm a scab now. Parody, joke,
right,
joke, parody,
so
parody. Yeah. So, like, it was definitely a, like, difficult pill for me to swallow talking to these guys.
Yeah, it is such a wild thing. And it's like, it's a great, I feel like it is almost, even outside of politics, is just such a good mystery novel move to a third of the way through the game, you meet a bunch of people and they're like, we killed him. You know, because then it's like, I thought this case was something, and it is suddenly turned into something else, because I thought I was trying to figure out who to kill here. I did something that I had never done in my previous runs, which is try to arrest the Hardy Boys on the spot. And you really have to go against all of the voices in your head who are like, danger, danger, danger. But I was like, no, I'm going to arrest them. And Titus just blows your fucking head off. Like, you just die immediately.
And he was right to do that, Jacob, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. It is there are so many interesting things about that interview. There's Elizabeth, who is the person who you thought was a gardener on like the first day, and turns out is like the kind of lawyer for them, if
Not
I'm
kind of,
right
like,
about that.
Yeah, she had her law school paid off.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Yep, 100%.
And so she is kind of this. She is on their side, like she is a union representative, but like she's telling Titus and the Hardy Boys to like stop talking about something, and then they will sometimes keep going to like boast about it or whatever. But so Blake, to interview Classier, you did eventually establish like authority or something in that conversation. Did you just pass the check, or did you like find a bunch of evidence to do it? Because I failed a bunch of times, and eventually you like find enough kind of conflicting evidence with their testimony that you can like, you can kind of pump your stats.
I had a bunch of evidence. Like I went and examined all the footprints, realized there was an 8th footprint. I think I also targeted one of them that's like clearly kind of the runt of the group. The one that's always pointing out his weight. I like targeted a bunch of questions at him, which threw him off. I was like, why are there 8 footprints if there are only 7 Hardy Boys? Also, their footprints match, who we think is the drug runner in the Lori group. So I like built up a bunch of evidence against him, and finally Titus broke. And does have this like kind of like, I mean, I don't know if touching is the right word, but he's like very clear. It's like, okay, this is who it is, but like do not go and be cop interrogation. Like this is a victim. Like go be like very like, I think he even says like have a conversation with her or whatever. By that point, I assumed I was going to talk to Classier. Finally, I'd seen her on the roof forever, and also when it was like, "There's a drug runner. It's a scary lady." I was like, "I bet that's Classier." So yeah, that's how I ultimately kind of got my way up there.
That's interesting. Did you do the drug plotline? Because it's not Classier. It's the it's like there's a lady lorry driver.
Oh, whoops. I thought it was Classier.
I can understand how you'd get there, though, because right at the start of the game, the first thing Classier says to you after that, I want to have fuck with you conversation, is, it's gonna suck to you when you have to.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
I was
it does.
so certain. I was so certain on that. Is it the old lady? Is it that fucking old lady? You can spoil it. I don't care.
The pale driver? No, I think you you don't meet her. You don't meet the drug runner. As far as it's like I'm halfway through this, so I could actually be misremembering.
No, you're right. She leaves right before Harry comes to town.
Okay. I thought something that did happen, Penny, that you just reminded me of is you learn that Classier had been assaulted, and then myself and Harry Du Bois simultaneously, in a bit of ludonarrative cohesion, remembered that on a lark had said something to the effect of, I would like to make fuck with you. And it's so funny. Harry has a fucking panic attack on the spot.
I got a message from Blake at like midnight that said, all caps, why did I have to say I want to make fuck with you?
Yeah. I personally don't feel like it ends up coming back to haunt you, at least in the moments I've played, which was very great, but it was definitely, I felt like I was really feeling what Harry was feeling in that moment when he freaks the fuck out.
It's more like you really disappoint Kim. He's like, oh boy.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I'm just preaching to the choir, but putting that as the first option in the entire game, aside from putting your clothes on, when you're me, who's playing the CRPG, being like, what is this fucking shit? I gotta read all this goddamn shit, click on all this shit. Yeah, whatever, lady. I want to make fuck with you. Get out of my fucking way. I just gotta play the damn game. Really kicked me in the fucking ass for that one. I tell you what, these motherfuckers.
I mean, that's part of the ludonarrative synchronicity too, is how impulsive Harry is. Like, if you don't find out how to get onto the wall between the dockyard and the strike, you can't figure out how to make the jump, or you can't get up there in the first place, and you can't beat up Measurehead. It's just like, all right, I'm gonna become racist on an impulse,
right?
Or
oh man,
you're trying to make Gartz, the cafeteria manager, feel better about the girl who left him. The next thing you know, oh my god, I went down like an alt-right tunnel, and now I'm talking about the cock carousel to this guy to make him feel better.
Yeah, you basically can become like an incel to Gart and be like, yeah, I know, women fucking suck.
No,
But you can do it accidentally.
Yeah,
that's the best part.
I hate Gart. I did get Measurehead's option. When I find my gun, I'm going to Gart first thing and killing him. I hate him so much. I begged an old lady in the middle of nowhere to let me sleep in her house so I didn't have to keep giving Gart $20 a day.
Yeah, well, congratulations on finding a place to live.
I did unlock Measurehead's learn how to be racist 101 thought, and the gamer in me was just like, man, if it'll just get him to move, I'm going to do this. But I fought it with everything I had, and luckily did not go down that thought process and beat his ass instead.
It is, the game kind of gives you an out with that where you can internalize it, and then it's like, oh, I'm just understanding what he's saying rather than like agreeing with him. Of course, in my playthrough, I was like, yes, skull sizes. You sounds right. I mean, the fact that he is literally named Measurehead is like such a Kojima-ass Die Hard man name, except like even better.
I didn't even put that together.
No, he has his phrenological measurements tattooed on his skull.
I didn't even think about that. God damn it.
It's his whole thing.
Speaking of when you get your gun, another option that you can do with the Hardy Boys is you somehow convince Kim to give you his gun. And then I was like, okay, point it at the Hardy Boys. And the game was like, no. And then I just threatened to kill myself in front of them, which, believe it or not, did not win me any points.
I still don't have my gun.
Oh, yeah, neither do I.
Okay. The Classier, okay.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Classier, first off, maybe the best voice actor in the game. Classier.
Even though it's not Dasha.
Well, perhaps because it's not Dasha. Jacob, I mean, here's my interrogation. I went up there. I tried to be very gentle with her. She was like, I was not raped. And I was like, well, okay. How did it go for you, Mr. Fascist?
It's interesting. Before I did the interview, I first tried to, there's a part, Blake, that you haven't got to, but it's not really a spoiler to say, Kim like goes away for a while. And so I tried to actually interview her solo, and the game would not let me. So I did the next best thing, which was I got drunk and did speed immediately before going up there, because you can find speed in her bathroom. And there's like a skill check to like sneakily take it. But I was like, nope, take it right in front of Kim. Just do it. It does not actually, in a move that is maybe bad for role-playing, but I would argue good for the world at large, it does not let you be too awful to her. Like, the inappropriate things that you can pick are more just, like, asking, like, okay, who else did you party with? Does party mean sex? Did you have sex with them? But it's, like, you don't get to trivialize her experiences of what, you know, may or may not have been sexual assault, which I think is like, I am fine taking that hit on my fascist roleplay because sure. I don't think the game really wins anything by like letting you be horrible to this person.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't feel like my interrogation particularly had any big surprising moments in it. It just basically I went up there and she was like, didn't happen. We were lovers. He was kind of weird. I want to talk about it more. And Penny first. Do you have this is one of my favorite conversations in the game. I will say, even though it is not explosive. How do you feel about it?
It kind of goes in with notifying the dude on the dock's wife that he was killed. It's one of those moments where the game like really lets you and him work in sync and lets Harry's professionalism shine through if he wanted to, which you were talking about, I guess almost expecting to be able to be worse to Classier in that situation. And in my mind, it's one of the things that makes Disco Elysium the most unique as somebody who really loves role-playing games. And every other one I've played, when you get your dialogue options, it's always, what do you want your character to say, or which of these most represents what you want to say. And I've never felt that way about Disco Elysium. I've always felt like Harry is his own character, And when it shows us our options, that is a list of intrusive thoughts. And we just get to pick which one wins. Like on the most hero to the working class playthrough ever, he still has these fascist thoughts in his dumb little head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to you to make sure they don't win. And it's like, in my mind, he's not this inherently mean, angry person, so he doesn't have these options to be so awful to Classier that it's like inexcusable. He just has the option to be a little dopey because he wants to get straight to the point. But I don't know, I really love the scenes when it lets you be a good cop for once. Normal.
I think it actually goes along with, Blake, what you were saying about expecting the game to be dumber and then it being smart. In like when you're talking to the union guys, you're like, okay, we're gonna be friends because I support unions. I think the way, and it's like I do not have direct experience with this, but I think it's really well done, and I have people in my life who do have direct experience with this and have talked to me about like how much they love this scene. The kind of like Classier is unbelievably chill all the time to a like eerie degree, you know, that like nothing ever gets her kind of like emotional or heightened or whatever. And there is this really kind of, you know, both funny and disturbing like conversation line that you go down where she's like, I'm like 89% sure I wasn't raped, is kind of what she says. And Harry is like, okay, so you're 11% possibility that you were. And she's like, I don't know how to explain it to you, man. Like, this is just something. And I think it's like, without trivializing rape as a concept, which I don't think the game does, it allows her to exist in this like weird shaky middle ground that I think a lot of women have kind of like unfortunately found themselves in, where it's like, maybe that wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but like I don't know if I'm comfortable saying that I was sexually assaulted, or like maybe she doesn't want to identify as someone that was raped because then that like means things for how she thinks about herself or whatever. But it's just this like, you do not expect her to be so blasé about like 89% sure I wasn't raped, and like the scene being written that way is just such a fascinating swerve from what you expect.
I think based on what I'm hearing is I just did not go down the right conversation path, because I did not get that response from her at all. Like, I felt like my conversation with her was fairly cut and dry. Just like, I went up there and she's like, nah. I was like, I listened to this tape, and she was like, it's just a locker, Donald Trump locker room talk, you know, like it's like
you can press her on it a little bit. And my guess is that you didn't because you were trying to be sensitive.
Yeah, I think okay. You know what? There was the prompt to, I want to ask about the assault again, and I just like couldn't bring myself to actually click it. So yeah, maybe that is what happened.
But her character is just, the voice performance is so good.
So good.
Her kind of level of just letting everything roll off her back. You can kind of ask her about the drugs, and she's like, yep, I do drug.
Yep.
There's this very funny line where she says that it's like, she says that her speed is medicinal, and you're like, what is it treating? And she's like, it treats not being able to stay up for 36 hours straight.
There are often moments in this game that, I'll be honest, I don't fully understand what they are, where it just starts describing a scene from elsewhere in Revachol.
Sure, shivers.
Yeah, and there was one that popped up while talking to Classier that had the funniest fucking quote in it. It was his partner Emilie Mullins can't be there. He's in another apartment with another man who's showing him a dead dog under the radiator. It's dead, Mullins says. No, the man replies. I touched him. He's warm. And then, paraphrasing, the next response is, yeah, he's warm because he's under a radiator, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah, it's just giving you these flashes of kind of cops from across the landmass. Another line that I like is, I interviewed her first thing in the morning, and when you say, I want to ask you about being raped, and she just says, the driest anyone has ever said anything. It's a bit early in the morning for raped, isn't it? Just like, oh boy. Did you, Blake, do the volition check at the end of this conversation?
Remind me what that is?
Because it is, it's a big moment, but it's almost like you don't really realize what's happening until it's maybe already done. It's like when you're finishing the conversation, it's just a volition check and it says like something's not right here.
Yes, but I don't think it went through. But I did one that went through that was like, look in her eyes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember like what happened there?
Not particularly.
I mean, if you failed, it would probably just be like, looks like she's telling the truth. Or whatever.
Yes, because then I was able to open up a whole line of conversations with Titus about how he's being manipulated.
Okay, so that sounds like you did.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so what happens in that scene? And it is like, oh boy, this is the good shit in terms of this game's writing, is that Volition kind of pulls you aside in your brain conversations with all your different skills and says, hey, listen to me right now. These other guys, they are failing you.
Right.
You
yes. Okay.
And then the other guys start coming in. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm fine. And there's this scene where electrochemistry comes in and he's like, you can trust me. I'm totally good. And Volition is like, hey, electrochemistry, what's under her tracksuit? And he is like, awooga, and his eyes bug out, and he starts hitting himself in the head with a hammer. And it's just, it is, like, I don't, Penny, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think there are any other scenes in the game where, like, one of the voices in your head is directly to you, like, do not trust these other guys.
I don't think I have seen any other points. I feel like it can happen in multiple different situations with Classier, where parts of your psyche become compromised, because I don't know if you know all of Classier's backstory or not, but I'll just say she is a very skilled manipulator. And I don't think it ever happens again where, you know, parts of your brain are saying, don't listen to electrochemistry, don't listen to empathy, they are fucking with you, they have been compromised, and you can't. But it is like a very extremely memorable moment where all these different thoughts in your head are at war with each other more than just the fascist communist stuff. Like they're trying to take direct control of you, but they just can't because there's a player in the way.
And it's also a weird moment to kind of evaluate, like, you know, which voices you're listening to, because on my like good cop playthrough, I was like, empathy's my man, you know, like this is what I want Harry to have. I want him to understand the plight of other people. And Volition is this like weird, kind of hard to pin down like what exactly it represents, but it kind of feels a little hardline, you know, like as compared to like, oh, my shivers and my empathy. I was never really super clear on Volition, and so like having that skill take you aside and being like, Volition's not what I want in interviewing someone who was maybe just sexually assaulted, and like them telling you empathy's wrong, you know, like listen to me. It really makes you kind of like you want to side with empathy because you think that you want to be empathetic in this situation. And so it's just a really it's a great little twist to the game mechanics.
Something I love that Disco Elysium does, and there's a moment up here with on the roof where you find Classier, are the little mysteries that often come in the form of doors. And I am working my way trying to unlock these doors. The blue door in the kitchen of the Whirling in Rags is my arch nemesis. I cannot find out how to open this fucking door. Believe it or not, Gart, a pain in my ass, a thorn in my side, is not helping. And the guy, the cook, I don't know what language he speaks, but it's not the one Harry speaks. I did just unlock the one behind the greenhouse. I saw the little apartment back there. Thought it was very interesting.
That's the one that Everett wants you to go in, right?
Yes. The church door is currently eluding me. However, so there's the Wild Pines. There's the trio of Wild Pines hired mercenaries. One is hanging from a tree. Certainly a wild pine if I've ever seen it.
Very good.
Thank you. Then that's all I had to say. It was just a long wind up to that. No, the second one is the guy in front of the big gate you're trying to open.
Like the scab leader.
Who the game begs you to not show him the photos of the dead body. And I said, fuck him. I don't give a fuck. Look at your dead friend. Tell me about the tattoos. And he did. And I was like, this game take fucking 20 years to write if you're coming up with that intricate of an explanation for tattoos I haven't even seen. The other one is supposedly in the windows somewhere. And my theory is he's in the Whirling in Rags behind the door on the roof. Don't tell me if I'm right or wrong. But I have nearly killed myself multiple times trying to kick that door down.
You're trying to kick open that door.
Yeah. So that is one of the many doors I'm trying to get into, and I think it's my top priority right now is figuring out how to get in there.
Blake, did you spend? I know this was a character that you were somewhat confused by in the first day. Did you talk to Joyce anymore?
The old lady?
The one on the sailboat.
Oh, yes. I had her tell me about reality. Said cool.
Okay, I want to spend some time on this. So did you first? So I accepted. You get the thought from her, derealization, and like in the thought cabinet, it like literally says like, you should do this one, like in a very direct way, more so than it usually does. And that also makes it much easier for her to give you the lowdown on reality. Are you finding if you have it?
It would appear I have not done derealization, unfortunately.
I guess so. Did you find out about the Pale?
No.
Okay.
Wait, is that the pandemic that went through at some point in the history of this city?
No. The Pale is there is some stuff about the shape of the world.
No,
that she
not
can
at
tell
all.
you
Not at all.
That will like break your brain. So we can save that.
Okay.
I think you should try and get there because it's interesting. Maybe internalize that derealization thought.
I think Joyce highlights, and this is not a real complaint with the game, but more so the way we have to play it. I think if I was playing this game leisurely, I would do like one conversation a day. And instead, I have to do 40 conversations a day. And Joyce is so dense. Like, just talking to her is so intense. And I think the last time I talked to her, it was at like 11 p.m. one night. And unfortunately, that was in one ear, out the other. But I don't think I heard anything about the Pale. I remember the pandemic being talked about quite a bit.
Okay. She does say, I don't think this is about the Pale, but she says Capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself. Even those who would critique Capital end up reinforcing it instead.
There you go. Put it on the shirt.
An interesting thing to think about, given what has happened to this game's studio in the time since release.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when are we going to talk about that, Jacob?
It is kind of such a messy story that I'm like, I kind of want to just tell people to watch that video, but the very short version of it is like a lot of the creators of this game, the main kind of creative director behind it, like kicked out, don't own the Disco Elysium license. Also, it seems like it was kind of a shitty studio to work at for a lot of them.
If you want to find out what happened, play Disco Elysium and go find the optional role-playing company in the abandoned shopping district. You can find out what happened to that game right in there. Yeah, man. So Measurehead whooped me one time.
Oh yeah.
Measurehead whooped up on me one time, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I gotta think about some racist theory for a while. But I held strong, and as seems to happen on days 2 and 3, you can run out of things to do. So I was trying to find ways to pass the time. And I think I was waiting till 21 o'clock, which is, I don't know what that is in real time.
9
p.m. in normal people time, because I wanted to go to the smoking man's apartment. So I was like, well, I'm just going to go talk to Measurehead, see what happens. There was nothing of value anyone was going to say in that conversation. So I was like, I guess I'll try hitting him again. And that's when I realized what you have to do, at least for me, was take the step back, 360 kick him.
That's right, baby.
Beat the fuck out of him. And then one of his girlies up there, I love them. It's just Harley Quinn kind of hanging out with him. I was like, I guess you're Measurehead now. And I was like, I fucking guess so. And then I made my way back there. There's the office you could find the little note in, which was very cool and kind of looked like something out of Deathloop. I was a big fan of that. But I also found my favorite character in the entire game, the guy sitting on the shipping container who just talks a lot. And at one point, the game stops writing.
Oh, yeah, the like whistling guy.
The game stops writing. In a game with more dialogue than has been uttered in the real world, this character talked too much for Disco Elysium, and there's a part where they stop writing his dialogue, and they're like, he's just kind of going on, man. Like, he's just kind of saying some shit right now. It's super annoying, but you should maybe be polite about it. And I was like, all right, I'm buckled in. I'm fucking listening to this idiot. Then I got to the end of his dialogue options, and I was like, truly nothing important said. He's just a funny little guy. And then I met the worst character in video game history, and I fucking hate him so much. What is his name? Everett?
Everett Clare, baby.
Yeah.
Everett is here's another boss fight. You have to sit in his chair. And the chair just hurts you the whole time.
Yeah. It's obvious that this would be the leader of the unions in retrospect. Like, they couldn't make him some messiah, right? They couldn't make him this like platonic ideal of who you want to lead the union, especially if you are aligning yourself mechanically and morally with the union in this game. And yet it still is such a gut punch to get there and be like, if I want to be who I believe myself to be, it means allowing myself to be blackmailed and manipulated by this dude who at one point is telling you how he's going to wipe out and gentrify an entire low-income area and wants you to collect signatures for it.
He wants to like build a YMCA in like a favela.
Yeah. And that I turned that one down. I was like, no fucking way. And he's like, no worries, man. I'm a vengeful son of a bitch. And I was like, God fucking damn it, dude. And it's the same thing with the Hardy Boys, right? Like, this game is so smart to flip your own expectations and beliefs on their head to make you like, it feels like the game is fighting you so often in these moments when you're trying to like be this like good version of Harry, and you're presented with such fucking scum on the side you agree with, which I assume is like the real world. I can't wait to find out one day.
when you eventually have a union.
When I go outside, I mean.
Everett is, I think it is like just one of those. The game is so good at kind of flipping what you think is going to happen on its head. Where have you landed with him without giving? It's like I don't think it's really a spoilery thing to talk about. Just like he doesn't change radically as a character.
You mean my take on him, or where I ended up with him in my playthroughs?
Just kind of like when you're thinking about Everett, is it just like Slimeball? You know, or do you have kind of like a more nuanced take on Slimeball?
In my mind, it's no different than like Garth hating Harry so much to the point that he becomes an incredibly annoying character. Like, yes, he's got his character flaws and he has his motivations, but it's important to remember, like, from a narrative perspective, that the RCM has kind of just left Jamrock, Revachol to rot, and has not had any, like, serious presence there in a very long time. So I think that with the Hardy Boys and with Everett and pretty much all the powers that be in that game interacting with you, I think they're kind of just trying to feel you out and figure out if you're going to be something that's good for the community, or if they can manipulate you to be another ally of theirs, or if they can just mentally dominate you so you know that you are not the law here. And as unlikable and sleazy as Everett is, I can't blame him for how he treats Harry in the slightest. As for whether or not he's good for the Union, I'm not the person to ask. I'm a very emotionally driven person. I fucking hate him.
I think it's a really interesting perspective. It's like, if you were not playing as Harry, if you were playing as a Union leader and a cop came in to your territory a place that cops had ignored for decades, and were just like, okay, I'm gonna sort all this shit out. It would be a fucking cool alpha move to make him sit in this shitty chair and like interrogate him. You know, we are kind of siding with Harry because Harry's the protagonist, and we are like, in our hearts, we know that we're trying to do the right thing. But like, I agree with you in that like, it doesn't make sense for him to be totally accommodating to Harry, because like, if he was, he would not be the person in that position to begin with. Like, to be the union leader in this town, you would need to kind of be someone who would like take and hold power and know how to use it. It just so happens that he fucking sucks and he's so annoying.
Yeah. And I mean, also just as a cop, a lot of people in general understandably have a very tough time believing your authenticity when you say left-leaning things. One of my favorite interactions in the whole game, I won't spoil it, but at pretty close to the very end of the game, you meet a man who considers himself to be the last true communist. And if you've gone on a leftist playthrough, you can say, hey, I'm a communist too, your movement is not dead. And he replies like, no, you're not, you're just a fucking liberal.
Yeah.
And just nobody believes that Harry's authentically leftist because he's a piece of shit cop.
The depiction of cops in this game is so interesting because on the one hand, like, it's very accommodating to the way I'm playing it, which is like, just, well, granted, the classic cop media is not, they're communists, but like that the cop is like this moral purist. He is just doing good for the common man, just righting wrongs out there. And yet, because like historically the cops have completely ignored this area, you get nothing but pushback from people, which is like a really smart way to handle police in a game. Like, I live in New York City, and granted, I understand I'm not the person at risk of violence from cops, but it's fucking way worse to see cops in subways, despite how they're supposed to keep subways safe. Like, it fucking is disconcerting, just being like, oh, these guys are fucking here. And I like that this game does not let you play it like a lot of other cop games where you are just like LA Noir and your ass through the shit. I don't know if that was a good example, but I love the pushback from people. I love that people don't bend over backwards to be accommodating to police. Like, they are rightfully scared of your presence because like they've had other protection systems, you know, they were communal ones because your ass was not here. And I think that's like a great touch in this game. That speaks to, you know, probably the philosophy of the makers and cops in general.
Did you learn what the union demands are, like the reason they're striking? Because this is something that I think Joyce will
everybody
tell
on
you.
the board.
Yeah, every worker a member of the board.
Fuck yeah, let's go. Doesn't seem outlandish to me. Every member a CEO, as far as I'm concerned.
And Joyce is like, you know, it's like there are 4,000 members. But it is yeah, I like that. I mean, in the same way that this game can make fun of communism in a way that media not written by communists has a really hard time doing because it understands what's funny about trying to be communist. Like, us kind of understanding that, like, ultimately this game is coming from like a pro-labor point of view, I think lets it kind of poke fun at union demands, at like labor relations and whatever, way more than if this game was, you know, like being written by a centrist who was like, and you know, when the unions go too far, things get a little tricky.
Yeah, it also is firmly anti-cop, but lets you play out your perfect cop role plays, which is kind of fascinating, but yeah, nevertheless. Good thing all those people still work there, and they're going to make this.
There's a thing with cops that I want to talk about, which is one of the case files. In your little binder, you can read just all these previous cases that Harry's worked, and a lot of them are really, I mean, they're all like really good and interesting. There's one called like the square bullet hole, and it's like, yep, a bunch of people just had like a square bullet hole in their head, and we don't know what happened, and it was never solved. But there's this one called the unsolvable case, which is just a great little piece of writing where it's essentially talking about, like, over many years the cops would constantly be called on this pair who would get drunk, and one would like start flashing everyone, and one would start doing kind of random property damage. And neither of those are arrestable offenses, and so they would just get a ticket, and then they would keep doing it. And no one could really stop them because, like, they weren't going to be thrown in jail for it, and whatever slap on the wrist they got, they would still do it. And then Harry gets put on the case, breaks down, beats one to the point of like handicapping them, and then they stop doing it because the other person has to like stay at home and take care of the person who he crippled. And it's like, case closed, the complaints stopped. And it is this like this unbelievably kind of bleak piece of writing about like, okay, you know, this person was brutalized by the cops. Their life is now like, you know, in pain forever. But like, other people stopped complaining about them, so like, I guess we fixed it, which is just this like, just such a dark view on like everything that you're kind of doing right in this game as a cop. It is not shy about reminding you like that the power relations between the police and normal people, and the way that cases are considered like closed or not, aren't like due to the good of the common man. They're just kind of like, well, when the cops decide they're done, they're done.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at Harry's clipboard, it even shows that he's notated that he's killed, I think, 5 people, or shot 5 people. 3. And Kim remarks that's like an incredibly low number because most of these guys just pop off for no reason. He like pretty much says that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you are a better cop than most. Most of them kind of suck, I'll be honest. And Kim knows that.
I don't know. Where was this development team located?
Estonia.
Really seems like they made this game about the NYPD.
I think that cops being bad is a pretty international experience.
Yeah, but
There's
let me tell
universal truth, isn't
and you think, but somehow they're winning the evil off as far as I'm concerned out here.
Blake, did you find the secret compartment in the clipboard?
Yes, I did. I found that on like day 1,
okay.
But I don't think I got it open.
Oh,
I think it. Yeah.
Is
there a way to open it, or do you just want to spoil it for me? Here's the thing. I will say I need to go back to the clipboard after talking to you a bit about it. It's on my list of things to do that I haven't gotten to yet.
You should do it because it's not like a big story thing, but it's just like there's a really weird move that it pulls that I would like to talk to you about it. That it just kind of like mechanically.
Would it be helpful if I told you where I left off, my day 2? What's up next? A little teaser trailer.
Yeah, there's some other stuff that I want to go into,
sure.
But I want to know, what are you trying to do?
I've hit most of my big moments here. I ended by going into the smoker's apartment and talking to his Sunday friend, and he's like, oh, cannon hit this building, knocked 4 floors down. I'm gonna renovate it. And I was like, is that why he calls you a Sunday friend, boss man? What's going on in here? A little suspect. It's so funny. All your choices are like, you're not answering my question. This is a dumb conversation. And then he's like, well, gotta go. So that's how that ended. I left a bunch of big narrative threads hanging. Measurehead is supposedly going to get the body down for me. I have information to go back to Titus. I got info from the... I got information from the union boss that I can take back to Titus, hopefully finally get to the end of that whole thing. I've just been kind of hung in limbo with him for a while. But getting that body down is a big one because I also have some conversation points with Classier I'm not able to do until after the autopsy of the body. Which, do police normally do autopsies?
It's like a field autopsy.
Okay.
It's
okay.
like
Because they're pretty far from home right now.
Yeah, it feels like they it's only those 2 guys. You know, they don't really have backup they're calling in.
Yeah. So those are the big things. I've got to get the body down. And I got to finish up the Hardy Boys and Classier. and see where all that's going. Those are the big things I'm going to hit. I also want to read all those case files because I have not done that yet. I still have more of the armor to find. I did find the little the hand ones, gloves.
Where are the gloves?
The little girl buried them in the sand. She built a sand castle. You and Kim go out and have a funny conversation about how the castle is in disrepair. So that's the only bits I've found. I haven't got the helmet, and then the leg shields are still on the guy.
Did you meet the cryptozoologist and his friend?
Yep.
The crypto-fascist?
Yep. Found them. Told him, hey, go back to your wife, dummy. Stop looking for these damn cryptids out here. Yeah.
There is something that is very something rotten coded that I did not get until this run through because I hadn't explored the doomed commercial area as much as you. One of the failed things in the doomed commercial area, the dice maker tells us, was a essential like a business that was a front that was like something stupid, but what it actually was a snuff radio station where people would listen to like real people being murdered, and that's what the radio station was. Something Rotten has talked about snuff films quite a lot with Manhunt, and they've come up at other times because that's what our podcast is. Blake, did you figure out Kuno? There is a...
Kuno has said some things about snuff to me that didn't quite click in my head. I did go into his little hideout with his pig head and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, elaborate for me. Tell me.
So Kuno has a skill check that's basically like figure out what this kid's deal is, and you do it, and it turns out that Kuno is not the thing. It is Kuno-S. It's like the other child standing over the fence who's yelling at you. And basically what you talk to Kuno and you find out that like she has actually killed people. Like she has murdered people, and basically Kuno found her like soaking wet under a table in like his apartment building's entrance or whatever. Like it sounds basically it's describing like she was in a state of shock after killing someone, and Kuno has somewhat adopted her. But part of what it says is that she was actually involved in those like snuff radio stations, which is this really kind of strange twist that I didn't get at the beginning of the game. And it's like I don't this doesn't lead into anything else in terms of like the broader story, I think, but it is just this like, what the fuck is Kuno's deal and Kuno-S's deal? And it's like, well, they were kind of involved in like commodified murder recordings.
I never knew about any of that. And I didn't know about Joyce talking about the Pale either. I was about to ask you to like DM me, hey, what's that about? I never did the, what did you say it was? Unreality?
Or a derealization? Or
derealization. I never had that conversation with her or anything.
It's cool. I will. I'll talk to you about it after we're done recording.
Cool.
Let's see. Idiot Doom Spiral. I want to talk about him just a little bit. When you're running around these kind of slums on the other side of the map, there are these three drunk guys. I can't remember what the second drunk guy is called, but the third one's, his name is Don't Call Abigail, and he just yells, Don't call Abigail. Which is
he rocks.
Good shit.
I did have to look up if Idiot Doom Spiral was voiced by Nick Mullen. Thankfully, he is not. But wow, he did sound quite a bit like him. Yeah, what about him, Jacob? He rocks. Best character in the game.
Yeah, so Idiot Doom Spiral is like this dude who is, just like constantly drunk, whatever, kind of sitting in a slum. Used to be rich. And if you ask him about his job, he's like, he kind of describes to you one of those jobs that's just nothing, where he kind of says like, oh, I had like an incubator. I had like 12 of the best minds under me. And it's like, okay, but what did you do? You didn't do anything. And then when you're like, okay, how did you end up here? He's like, I went for a run and I forgot my keys and I couldn't get into my apartment. And then I tried to go to work, but I didn't have the keys to my work either. And I just ended up here. And you're like, that doesn't sound right. Like, it seems like you're leaving stuff out. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I forgot my keys and now I'm here. And it is like,
he fucking
it's the most like CEO brained bullshit where it's like he completely self-destructed his life and has somehow turned it into like, I just forgot my keys and now I'm sitting in a slum and have been drinking for 3 weeks straight. And then you can find his jacket, which is like so disgusting that it hurts you to touch it.
Oh, yeah. The one encrusted in guano, is that his?
Yeah.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah.
He doesn't accept it, right?
No.
Even if you clean it.
I haven't. Yeah, do you have to go to the kitchen to clean it?
No, there's like literally right next to him. It's the lady who's washing clothes, and she'll clean the jacket for you.
Okay, because there's the boots, which I got off the dead man. You actually boil in the kitchen of the Whirling in Rags, and
good to know.
And
that's not going to stump me now. Now I'll know when I get those up.
Okay. I think that's all my notes, except for I just want to talk about I have internalized the fascist thought, the Revacholian nationhood, which is essentially racism plus alcoholism. Like I think I get better stat boosts from alcohol now, which is not a bad way of conceptualizing fascism.
It was the same for me. I got stat boosts from alcohol too.
Another thought that I internalized was anti-object task force, which you get from just like punching everything, like punching the mailboxes and doors.
Yeah.
And like it heals you when you punch stuff now, but you still take damage from it. So it just kind of, you can stay at neutral if you like punch a mailbox because you get healed and then you take damage. But the crazy thing about the fascist thought is now, like, the end goal of internalizing it, or the end result, is every time I give a fascist answer, I take mental damage, which didn't happen before. So every time I'm, like, talking to a guy, and I'm like, oh, yeah, man, it's these foreigners, like, they keep fucking up. Harry takes morale damage. Like, I guess the game just being, like, you know, being fascist is, like, literally self-destructive. Like, you are, like, destroying your brain with this. But the result of it is I am having to buy so many of those fucking, like, morale health packs. I'm spending all my money on those to just get charges so I can keep saying fascist things, which keep hurting myself. And so I'm, like, just going to the Freet and buying these drugs over and over again, which is, like, the game does not make it easy for you to be fascist. It really, like, makes it miserable the whole time.
And that mirrors your real life, Jacob, in what ways? Just wholly?
Yeah. I'm buying drugs all the time because I keep hurting myself with my thoughts.
That's so funny. Here's the thing. When we announced the season, I saw a few listeners worried, and Jacob yourself worried, that we'd have 2 seasons in a row where I didn't like the games. Fear not, my dear friend. I'm locked in, baby. But I'm not playing Planescape Torment. I can't read this much ever again.
This is it forever now. Yeah. Penny, what do you think Blake should be looking out for in the next section? You know, maybe not even story-wise, but I feel like you've done a really good job here of kind of contextualizing the mechanics. Like, are there things that you notice now about Disco, like how it's constructed, that you didn't necessarily your first playthrough?
Okay, you said you're pro-union in the game, and you haven't been to the church yet. You have not gotten into the factory. If I were you, and this is just one of those little things I obsess at over this game, I would try to keep an eye out for comparisons between Harry's life, the fall of disco, and the fall of Revacholian communism. I think it is the most interesting little set of parallels ever, and it's also why the game's called Disco Elysium. I don't know, it's a very vague, abstract concept to just say, hey, be on the lookout for that, but it's the most fun way to interpret the game for me, personally.
I think the game is like, it's throwing mirrors of Harry at you constantly. You know, like the idiot doom spiral obviously is. I actually thought about when you find that guy, the second body on the pier, it reminded me of that scene in Silent Hill 2 when there's the dead body looking at the TV, and it is the character model of James, and it's just kind of like, what's going on here? Where it's like, obviously that is just like, that's Harry on a slightly worse day than what he had, is concussing himself and bleeding out on a dock.
Harry, in my playthrough, literally said that. Like, I mean, he didn't say the Silent Hill 2 part. It would have been cooler if he did. But he, like, I had a dialogue choice that I chose that was like, Kim, that literally could have been me. And Kim was like, there. Fear not. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of day 3 on Disco Elysium. Next week is going to be a slightly different time scale. We are not going to play the next 2 days. Instead, we are going to play until the confrontation in the square. And maybe the conversation that happens after that. Blake, I think you'll know it when you get there. But we'll just see how long that takes. Penny, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. Your channel on YouTube is Leadhead. We talked about it a little. Is there anything else that you want to plug or point people towards?
Just thanks for having me. I guess in terms of in terms of plugs, if you're transgender, maybe look up the Trans Femme Field Guide that I did. Pretty video I'm super proud of. Beyond that, just stay tuned. I don't really know where I'm going with my channel right now, but hopefully it's interesting.
And for everyone else, thank you for listening to Something Rotten. And until next time, every worker a member of the board.
Bye.